Hi everyone. This is Chris. Hi everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. You are watching Black Tea News. I was pushing all the wrong mute buttons. I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. It's Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News today. So there's a lot going on today, but there's a little bit that I missed. So I wanted to get into this big kerfuffle with Turning Point USA that they had going on with Brandi Love, hence the title of today's topic about conservatives getting in bed with porn stars. And I don't mean literally in bed, figuratively in bed, but literally a porn star. But I also would like to talk about a video I saw on TikTok, which I did respond to. I did post the video, so maybe some of you saw it, with someone talking about critical race theory. And I also would like to defend a TikToker that I very much love their page, love their family, at least what I see, on the internet, and someone who loves history. Some people didn't like something that he covered, and they're coming after his family. And there's a lot of people on the left who say they just want, like, I don't know, accurate history taught, but it seems like people aren't mature enough to actually learn about history. So I'm going to talk about that as well. And also there's some breaking news. Larry Elder, as I've done a show on when he was running for, he was running to be on the ballot to replace Gavin Newsom in California. Well, California is playing games. They're saying he didn't do everything he needs to, and basically it was like last minute that they said he couldn't compete, so he was suing them with and it's like down to the wire. And he may be in court right now, actually, trying to make his case heard. I saw on his Facebook they posted some stuff. So like he's on the docket, so we will see what happens with that. But that is a crazy story. But before we jump into it, I'd like you guys to please visit my website, blacktnews.com. Check out content that I have on the site. Also, I got some shirts and stuff in. You see, like this hoodie I have, GOAT. I finally got that in myself. So if you guys like that, you can get it on the website. I have it in more than just a hoodie. You can get it in a t-shirt. Though it is quite comfy, but I know it's a little warm outside, but it is a comfy hoodie. And I did some TikToks and stuff in it today. Some people were asking about it, but it is on the website. Also got this in, and I got some other stuff. I was wearing this on some TikToks the other day. So I got some cool stuff in I want you to check out on my website, and let's just hop into it. So first thing I want to talk about is this TikTok regarding critical race theory, and someone was pretty smug about it online. They're leftist with a bigger page than I have, but I went at him because I'm really sick of I know people come so smug, and I know I can maybe come off some smug sometimes, but they don't realize there's so many people who want to fight, claim they want to fight for the other. That's how Dave Rubin used to call them, like the other, like the minority or whoever. But they come off as so racist. And, have you ever seen like Amy Horowitz, like go to like a leftist school, and they'll ask a bunch of kids like, can Black people get IDs, or are ID laws, voter ID laws racist? And they're like, yeah, but sometimes people don't know where the DMV is, and they'll say these answers that are just really, truly absurd. and then he'll go to like the Bronx or somewhere and start talking to Black people, and they're like, yeah, I know where the DMV is. Yeah, I have an ID. It's right here. So it's just really, really ludicrous, the sort of things that people say. And it doesn't make sense. The only reason why you wouldn't want people to have IDs is if you would want illegals to vote. That's the only thing I can think of. That's the only thing thing I can think of the position on the left for that. But let's go ahead and play this video, and I want to put all my thoughts. I did do a TikTok about it. I didn't get all my thoughts out. Maybe you saw me, this reply video. I did post it on my social media, but I wanted it to be a minute in case anyone wanted to like share it around in the particular way on TikTok. So I'm going to dive into some more things, kind of complete my thoughts here.
Racism isn't born, it's taught, and that's what critical race theory does.
Holy shit, I am begging conservatives to actually look up what CRT is. For background, in his video, he was talking about this Daily Caller tweet and then complaining about CRT being taught in schools. But throughout the whole video, it's very evident he doesn't know what CRT is, so let's talk about it. CRT is just observing the law's role in platforming, facilitating, producing, and insulating racial inequality in our country. To put it more simply, it looks at how facially neutral laws can create disparate racial outcomes. In essence, you're ignoring the intent of the law and focusing on outcome. For example, voter ID laws. They're facially neutral on paper and don't target a specific group. But CRT dives into the actual process of how voter ID laws function to disproportionately affect non-white people. CRT isn't taught in middle schools, it's taught in fucking law school. What conservatives are actually mad about are just teachers accurately teaching US history. You know, by like acknowledging the history of systemic racism in our country. But that's good that they're teaching that. It's critical as citizens that we know our country is not and has not been perfect. So yeah, fuck that, but have a good one.
I apologize. No, I didn't remember that there was that much swearing in it, but well, it's got to be monetized, not right now anyway. So, but I just apologize for the vulgarity. But anyway, so first of all, I find it interesting that so many of these there's so many people who are trying to disconnect critical race theory from like Marxism. And like Mark Lamont Hill, if you haven't seen, he did an interview with Liz Wheeler, who used to have a show on OWN. And I think she's running her own podcast and doing some other things, but she's not. She used to the show The Tipping Point. That's what she had before. So she doesn't do that anymore. But I would see her like her videos or whatever. So she was on. She had tweeted something about Mark, so he invited her on his show. It's like Black News Tonight or something like that. So they were talking about critical race theory, and she broke it down, and she said it was a Marxist, stemmed from Marxist ideology, and Mark is like, I would disagree with a lot of that. And so she kept breaking down like, okay, well, it stems from critical theory, and critical, race theory is critical legal theory and critical theory, and then critical theory stems from these academics that came out of the Frankfurt School and this Marxist ideology, blah blah blah. So she did a trail, which I keep saying this, and it's really really simple. It can take like 5 minutes to Google and at least find the connection. And so, well, he kept saying, well, can you point to me anywhere where a critical race theory person specifically says that they want to tear down everything and lead a Marxist revolution? Can you specifically find a place where they do that? And it's like, obviously you're playing games, bruh. Like, is someone going out there saying, yeah, we want to spread communism everywhere? You don't have to do that to want to do that. And if that was your goal, why would you say that? Like out in the open like that? Because there's a lot of people in America who are at least still going to be really, really against that. So if you're going to do this crafty spy thing when you're trying to just like tear down all of our institutions, I don't think you would like put in the fine print, communist revolution. Like you wouldn't do that. But she kept explaining like the tenets of those things connect. So I mentioned all that to say this kid in this video who I played, he is anti-capitalist. He's against capitalism. And a lot of people who I find like who are defending it are into, they're against capitalism. And they may not call themselves Marxists. They may not be full-blown communists, but I think it's interesting that they're people who I say there's like 3 people who have noticed who defend critical race theories. There's people who just absolutely do not know what it is. Absolutely do not. And there's people who talk about it, who don't like it. They or at least they don't think that they don't like the idea of it, but don't have a clear understanding of it. And but they just dislike the things that they hear about it. But a lot of the things that people are hearing about it is things that are connected to it. So I don't give them as hard of a time, but I do think everyone should read up on it a bit and try to understand it more, because it's really not just, they say it's not in schools, but the problem is that it's not just in college. It's in your kids' schools. It's in your TV. in your Hollywood, and then it's your jobs. It's everywhere. So so there's people who don't understand it. Then there's people who've already bought into the worldview of critical race theory, of seeing everything with this really racial lens. And I would say that this guy is one of those people who's already bought in. And then I think there's people who maybe aren't actually for it if you look down to the nitty-gritty of stuff, but at the end of the day, they see an advantage to supporting it because they feel like, you know, at the end of the day, it'll get them more access, it'll get them more power. Like, I don't, like, Joe Biden is into supporting some really, really leftist crazy ideas right now. It's not because I legitimately think he believes a lot of that stuff, but he sees a lot of power or advantages to making a coalition with a crazy radical left. Like, he's come out and finally said, like, communism is bad, but his administration was very slow to say that. He has said stuff like, we need to chill out with the defund the police. But if you remember on the campaign trail, in the RNC, the GOP war room, you can Google it, not Google it, just go to YouTube. And they had a video, like a clip, actually it was a Now This video, but they clipped it out of Joe Biden talking to someone, and they were talking about defunding the police. Would you be open to defunding the police? And he said, yes. So you cannot say that these Democrats, though they are trying to make it seem like it, are removed from that. But do I think that Joe Biden thinks that that is a good idea? No, absolutely not. When he was vice president, he thought, like, he was on the campaign trail. He talked about how less policing and stuff he thought led to bigger crime, bigger rape, bigger, lots of different things that'll happen in a community. So in his heart, and then they did the crime bill. Like, that people do stuff. You got to go out there and arrest people. Like, you need the police. He knows that on a deep level. And now they've backtracked it because they know it was dumb. But why would they go around pretending like all cops are evil? Not literally all cops, but basically that's like the default. And there are some good guys in there. So why would they do that? Because they saw a benefit to pushing that ideology with these people. So do I believe that he really believes that? No. Is he really Catholic, and does he probably believe abortion is evil? I probably. But he would rather table that to push things like the Hyde Amendment because that's what his crazy base wants. So I don't think they're legitimately sold in, and they've defended critical race theory, which I don't think he probably has a vast understanding of. I don't know him specifically, but Jen Psaki was asked, do they support it? And she just framed it as, we want to teach accurate history. So they're not being honest with it either, probably because they know that it's just bonkers and they don't buy into it, but they don't want to isolate those who are buying into it. So this man is someone who's anti-capitalist. And so I just think it's interesting how many people like him are, against capitalism. Done a couple of videos that I found, like, bashing it. And while they use their smartphones to make videos on TikTok, he's probably in the creators fund and stuff too. And they make money. There was a video, I did a video response to one girl, and she was claiming that none of the Avengers would have been MAGA and had really, really dumb reasons for it. So I rebutted against her, but she claimed that Ant-Man is anti-capitalist because he was a thief, and which does not make you anti-capitalist. But and so it kind of, and there was another video where she seemed to be anti-capitalism, but I saw another video, she's selling merchandise. So the system works for some people, and apparently it works for some of these people who are against it. So it is interesting. It is interesting that a lot of these people are already, like, in the camp of the outcome of what kind of stuff critical race theory will lead to, because it does criticize our institutions and ultimately wants to deconstruct them. So the real big thing I wanted to talk about is this whole, you look at laws that are, he said you have to look past the intent or not care about the intent. You have to look at the outcome. And if the outcome has a disproportionate effect, you have to look at it. And then that's a crazy opinion, in my opinion, like to just get rid of intent which is interesting because I've shown you guys this graphic before about signs of whiteness, traits of whiteness. And let me see if I can find it. Traits of whiteness. It's not on the first page, not on the. I think that's right there. Just as like intent doesn't matter. Like intent is a sign of whiteness. So that's interesting. So he's saying like for critical race theory that you have to look beyond intent of the law and then see what kind of if it has a disproportionate effect on minorities. And so to me, it just feels like then they don't care about any sort of equality under the law, any kind of equal protection. They don't care. If we have a really, really base law, and his example is voter ID, which most people have it. Most people want people to use it. If you don't have an ID and if you're voting and you're not actually supposed to be voting, then your vote, and you get away with it, your vote is equal to mine, though you should not have one. So if I'm voting for Trump and you're voting for Biden, I mean, it's like it cancels it out. So there's an illegitimate vote out there that is trying to overpower my voice. So why would I want that to succeed at all? I wouldn't. I absolutely wouldn't. But everyone agrees that you should have to prove who you are. And most people are able or capable, but they think it's bad because they're trying, I don't know, to make the case that it's harder for minorities to get one or they have less or whatever. But the reason isn't what's your argument for that being the case though? Is it because you think Black people are too poor to get one? Because a lot of people have it by alcohol, cars, you know. I got carded at Arby's, which that TikTok did really well. Because I went to Arby's with my family and they had, pick up stuff for dinner. And it's like for 7 adults. And so, and then they get you because, you know, you say what size you want and you say medium because you figure it's regular. But no, the regular is small and the medium is large. So that's just like a way that they upcharge you. And so, and it wasn't me who ordered it, it was Tina. It was actually Tina's fault. And so we ordered it and the order came out to over $50. And so they asked to see our ID. And so I was like, ID. And so, because they hadn't asked that before. I've been to this Arby's a lot. It's like not too far from my house. And so they explained like, we just need it for our order. So, you know, maybe they've run into like identity theft problems or something like that. And they're just trying to verify that that's absolutely fine. Actually, it's good. Especially, you know. So, but it was funny to me because I'm like, they want ID, but they trying to say if you have an ID, present one when you vote, then that's racism. So I like pulled over after I got our food. I was like, I like to report a hate crime. And I'm like laughing and it's a joke. Though some people still were like, no, it's not racism. I'm just like, it's a joke. But most people got the joke. And so that video did really well. And it just like took like, you know, not even 5 minutes to do. And I'm just like, I had spent so much time on another video that day and that one just like blew up. But the point is that so many people need ID for so many different things. And it's just ridiculous to think that a functioning adult cannot get one. If you don't have an ID, it's probably because you have checked out. You've just checked out and you don't want one, whatever. And if you don't care enough about voting to get an ID, what makes you think that this person is informed? Now, there's no like test you have to take to vote. I'm not saying that there is one or needs to be one or that needs to be a law or anything like that. But people just have this idea that, oh, it's so good, all these people are voting. Like, wouldn't you rather have people who are informed voting? And I'm not saying that ID should be a way to be some kind of intellectual doorway into people not voting. But I'm saying there's obviously a ploy where Democrats really, really, really are invested in people not checking people who vote to be able to identify if they really should be able to vote. And they're really into the idea of people not being informed. And there's evidence for that because they kept saying, get your ballot, turn it in. Like there's not even a debate yet. You want people to turn in their ballots before they can even speak to each other? Before like more information comes out? Like, oh, we got to suppress this information. We got to suppress COVID information. Well, you suppressed information that was correct. Well, we got to suppress the New York Post because the Hunter Biden story, that was a real story. NPR was just like, well, we're not going to deal with it because we don't think it's real or it's fantasy or something. It was real. Laptop was real. And they never like really pretended like it wasn't. They didn't lie and say that it wasn't real. They just called it disinformation. Well, I guess they were dishonest in that sort of way, but they didn't deny that the emails that were coming out were real. So that should have raised questions and eyebrows from the press. But instead, social media was like, we're going to block the oldest newspaper in the country. And they used a hacked materials rule or something, even though they let other things that are hacked fly all over the internet. So they're really good at trying to control information. That's why they don't mind as many people voting as possible. That's why they don't really want the Electoral College and they like the popular vote, because they control social media, they control academia, and they control Hollywood. So they control so many different forms, and right now they have government, so they're trying to control your elections to switch them over federally, so you can't have any sort of local control. So if they can get every single lever of power, they're going to rig the game so opposition cannot ever win again. So that's really the real danger we really need to talk about and focus on in the party. But I guess I'll get into more of that another day. But people can absolutely vote. People can get IDs and vote. It's not hard. It is absolutely not hard to do that. So alleging that is a disproportionate effect and we need to do something about voter ID laws when everyone is on a playing field where it's equal, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that there's some kind of racist intent there in the law. Now, there have been laws that have been passed in the past to disadvantage minorities. But it seems like if it's a policy that Democrats like, then they don't care. Minimum wage was proposed by eugenicists. That was a big thing that was like coming out of Harvard. Harvard, like late 1800s, early 1900s, a lot of eugenics there. They kind of tampered it down a little bit, like when the rise of the Nazis, because they didn't want to be associated with that. But yeah, they heard about minimum wage and they passed it in other places that, hurt immigrants. So they wanted it passed because they felt that low-skilled workers shouldn't be working, I guess, or getting that kind of money. And there's only so much you can pay people. So if you raise up the minimum wage, why would they hire so many? It just prices out low-skilled workers, which is obvious, I guess. And it's still obvious today, but people still want to keep raising the minimum wage. So I don't trust the genuine nature of a lot of people who are pushing the critical race theory stuff, because I don't think it's really meant to help people. I just think it's meant to tear down our system so we can eventually get to a communist government. I mean, another thing that's instituted or pushed, rather, like people talk about systemic racism. Obviously, Planned Parenthood is an example of that. You had Margaret Sanger, who was into eugenics, who wanted to limit the population of Blacks and other minorities, the poor, people who she thought were dim-witted or whatever. And they would hire like ministers and stuff to be like, oh, it's totally fine. You should go get this birth control and other stuff like that. Like there was a goal, there was a plan to limit Blacks. And to this day, where do you see Planned Parenthoods? Low income communities with lots of minorities. When they advertise, I saw they put out, this wasn't last year, maybe it was the year before or something like that. Or maybe even the year before that, but I saved the tweet somewhere on my phone where they just had an advertisement like Happy Mother's Day. And they had 3 pictures, and there were 2 Black moms in one, and then there was a Hispanic woman. I'm like, you're not even trying to hide it, are you? Okay. So when I hear people talk about systemic racism, and their definition is really like, I don't know, really cumbersome. it just really catches a lot, I think, or can. So Ben Shapiro and other people just kind of shrug it off. I'm like, no, let me use their definition. And if we use their definition, then the most obvious example, in my opinion, would be Planned Parenthood. Because if it has a racist intention and it still has a disproportionate effect, then it's still going to qualify. Even if, like, you could say the people at Planned Parenthood right now aren't racist and out to kill your babies, like intentionally, but it still has a disproportionate effect. Well, but when I'll bring this up to Democrats, they'll say, well, those women are choosing to get those abortions. And I'm like, yeah, but the same could be said about predatory lending, like in neighborhoods where there's like they obviously put women in this situation or come to like advertise in a certain way and then convince them. Democrats do this whole big thing where they convince you that it's life isn't a life, that what you want to do is more important, that it's totally not shameful or anything. If you want to go ahead and do that, it's not a big deal. You can get back to life. There, without any repercussions. They don't even do the safe, legal, rare thing. It's just anytime, anywhere, if you want to, no judgment zone. So they're doing this kind of whole mental ninjutsu on you. The whole culture is gravitated toward you walking into their clinic. So I don't trust a lot of people who talk about these issues. I really don't. I really, really don't. I really, really don't. Especially if they're pushing critical race theory. So I think it was the Washington Post, Ben Shapiro talked about this on a show, that they did a story about how more minorities were getting in car accidents during like COVID. And so the solution to the article, like it seemed proposed that they need to just put more money into infrastructure. And it's like, are you going to talk about why they might be dying? Like, are they driving recklessly? Are they driving fast? Which that could be a reason, because there was a lawsuit, I think during the Clinton administration, and I think about it was New Jersey Turnpike, I think it was, about that people kept getting like speeding tickets, and they said Black people were getting more speeding tickets. And so they did a study, and it didn't come out till like some years later, but Black people were speeding more than white people for whatever reason. Whatever cultural reason that is, I don't know. Because I pretty much usually do the limit myself, especially in places I'm unfamiliar with. So I don't know why that is. I can't give you an explanation, but I do know they found out that was the case. So if there's a population that's speeding more, it's likely they're going to pulled over more. So did the piece like really look into all the sort of reasons? That's not their end game. Their end game was to say, well, because they're trying to pass infrastructure bill, right? So like we need more money on infrastructure. Figure this out. How is that going to help? I don't know, but I guess they're going to figure it out. But just throwing money, it's political. There's no real intention on helping anyone. So this little communist here, I don't know if he's a communist. This guy, I don't know if he's a communist. But he's anti-capitalist. He doesn't like capitalism. And he's talking about critical race theory. And he said that he wished conservatives would learn about it, educate themselves, and things like voter ID laws are extraordinarily racist. They're not. And all the explanations I hear from the left about how they are pretty darn racist. So I did challenge him and say, why don't you tell me why you think Black people are too dumb and stupid and poor, too poor and stupid, I guess is what I said, to get free IDs in Georgia. Because they are different prices across the country. And some of them are more expensive than others. But in Georgia, you can get a free one for the purposes of voting. So that's not a deterrent. And I know there's other states that have like start doing like the voter ID laws, but Georgia was like a really hot button topic for a little bit. So I think they should have to explain that, but they don't have good explanations, not at all. Not at all. So they, they really don't want equality. And the problem when people try to solve things, let's say minorities do have a particular problem getting IDs. The problem wouldn't be fixing the law that, to try to make it more accommodating. The law isn't the problem. If access is the problem, then why don't we do other things in the community to try to help people get IDs? Doesn't that seem like the obvious thing to do? Help people get IDs if they really need them, as opposed to not passing integrity laws for our election process? Doesn't that seem to make more sense? It makes more sense to me. If people need IDs, then go help them get IDs. If people need help getting to the ballot box, on election day, help them get there. But their goal is just to restructure our laws. And they're saying the intent of the law doesn't matter. Well, the intent of the law is to protect our voter integrity, because it protects my vote. Because if you have someone voting who shouldn't be voting, they're trying to cancel out my legitimate voice, my legitimate vote. So I want people to have to prove that they're voting. Personally, I would like if everyone just showed up on election day and voted. If you legitimately need an absentee ballot, if you're an elderly person or out of town or something like that, I want that to be made available to you. But all these states have 2 weeks or whatever, and they're complaining because they're limiting the amount of drop boxes that didn't exist before COVID. That's crazy to me. It's just, maybe some of you are watching from other states, so you're like, I like my 2 week voting thing. I don't like it. I think you should show up on the day and vote. And I think multi-day elections, it outprices a lot of good people who may want to run an effective campaign. If you're running for president, you should be able to have people at the polls or whatever have, until the end. But if you're like a local state rep person and you're running on a shoestring budget, those election days are expensive. So I don't like it for lots of reasons. But the law isn't bad. But they're saying the intent of the law doesn't matter because it has a disproportionate effect. That's crazy. It's crazy. So nothing matters. Reasons don't matter is what they're saying. And I know that's there's things like that, like Ibram Kendi and other people say. Some people say you shouldn't care about critical race theory, what people are saying, unless you get it from like Derek Bell and other people who are like really the founders, I guess, of it. But in like critical race theory and introduction, they say there's an activist element to it, and they talk about spinoffs of other like critical race theory stuff. So I don't think that's fair either. And then it doesn't matter. Teachers unions are inviting Ibram Kendi to stuff anyway, so they think he's legitimate. So we have to deal with his bogus way of thinking. So we got to talk about it. And white fragility. People want to act like, well, Robin DiAngelo, she's not into critical race. It says on her website she's into critical race theory. That's what it says. And everybody and their mama bought white fragility last year. So we're not going to just pretend like she's ostracized after y'all made her a big thing. Because now it looks inconvenient and parents are rising up. But anyway, I did not mean to talk that long about that particular topic. I got riled up. So I want to play this other TikTok video from a creator that I genuinely like. He loves history. Him and his wife both have a TikTok account, and she would go, "Hey babe," and she would ask a question that the commenters left, and like, who would win? This army or whatever, and then he'll just go on in a big rant, and then he would be talking about it, and then it would cut off the time. I mean, so I thought it was funny and nerdy, and it's really fascinating. So he has a series where he just talks about people who do extraordinary feats, and people didn't like who he talked about, and they came after him. They came after his family, and TikTok ended up muting this video I'm going to play for no good reason. They said it violated community standards. I don't know why. I don't know if they got it back up with the sound, but it was really wild to me. He's defending himself, and then they muted it. So I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to talk about my thoughts.
I cannot believe that I actually have to say this, but here it goes. I am not a fascist. I am not a fascist sympathizer. I am not a Nazi, nor do I support Nazis in any way, shape, or form. I cannot believe that that is something that actually has to be said. Over the past few days, things have essentially been hell on the internet here for me. Basically 90% of all comments essentially look something like this. You have individuals that are attacking me based off my race, and people blatantly misrepresenting what I had actually said. Even going so far as to wish that my wife and I would die. And that's not even counting the actual threats. And all I had done was make a video on L'Oreal Lanterne, the man who was the soldier of 3 armies who truly is a badass of history. But people are really misrepresenting what exactly I mean by a badass. My badass series includes Leo Major, the Native American war leader Joe Medicine Crow, Mad Jack Churchill, Audie Murphy, and many others. You see, in badass of history videos, I don't actually talk about someone's morality. It's about the feats that one did. I mean, hell, Genghis Khan is a badass of history. He is also an absolute monster. But it really comes down to the definition of badass that you use. And one of the key problems that we're facing in history is that people are not looking at the actions of an individual. And so no, I am not a Nazi sympathizer. I simply want to tell the stories of people throughout all of history in the most neutral way possible. And the thing is, you can say whatever it is that you want about me, but leave my family alone.
So yeah, he's one of my favorite creators, content creators on that site. And what I want to talk about is the fact that you hear so many people saying, we just want accurate history. We just want accurate history. But I don't think people have enough maturity to even listen to a minute lecture on anything, just stating facts. People are so silly, and they get so caught up in their 2021 like cancel culture mentality that they can't even think straight and listen to anything. Yet we do so many monstrously crazy things today that people in the past would just want to burn us for, frankly. So he does a series, and it's just objective history, just objective facts, and people go nuts. Went over nuts over this, attacking him, his family. But the crazy thing about this, though, is there was another video. He and his wife were like, she asked him like, would he date her back in the certain time period? And he's like, oh, but that would have been illegal back then. He's like, oh, but I don't want to break the law. And so he was kind of like hesitating. She's like, babe. And so they were, it was kind of funny. But the people in the comments just went crazy on them and was saying that he's a racist and all this other kind of stuff. So his wife came back and did a video and was like, guys, because his wife is black. And she said, sometimes you guys be leaving, even people who are nice, sometimes be leaving crazy comments. And there's a lot of mixed couples on the internet, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, where people will trash them for just being a couple. And she's like, there's so many comments that are negative today. Can you imagine how it would have been in the past? And she said, I probably wouldn't have dated him. And she just flat out said it. Because if people are messed up today, can you imagine it back then? But people judge so harshly. So I just know there's an audience who really, really enjoys them, but there's obviously always trolls who come in on say stuff. I get all kinds of trolls. I like to make fun of them. Actually, I made like 2 videos like going at my trolls today. But it's just really crazy that people have their kind of skewed sense of self-righteousness while they can be so cruel themselves. And so it makes me think about like when Trump was on the campaign trail. No, not the campaign trail. He did a rally. I believe he was, no, maybe he was, I can't remember I think he was president at the time, but he was at a rally and he was talking about the Civil War. Now, Trump, he's not the greatest with the details, but he was going through the story of the Civil War. He's a good storyteller. Not always great with the details, but he can tell a story. So he was talking about the Civil War, and he was talking up General Robert E. Lee, which I don't care how you feel about history. Objectively, both sides wanted him. He was a good general. It's an objective truth. So he's like playing up the story, talking about the stuff. I watched a documentary a couple years ago. I think it was one that Fox News did, and they were talking about him and Stonewall Jackson. I'm just like, what? I'm like, man, they're just like killing it together. And Stonewall ended up getting shot by his own side, and ended up like dying of like infection from his wounds. And I'm like, that was an act of God. That was an act of God, because they were just like unbeatable. And then like Lincoln had a general who was just like incompetent, who ended up running against him as president. But he just couldn't win. He couldn't win, and Lincoln was just trying so hard to get someone to be able to beat Lee. They were trying so hard to beat Lee, and then Grant came along. Grant, who was an imperfect person, he was an alcoholic. So Trump was building up the story about Robert E. Lee, I think, to eventually get to the part with Grant when he came along, and they were able to overcome, and the Union was able to win. So sometimes you have to put things into perspective and acknowledge the feats of Lee to acknowledge the feats of Grant, and how amazing that was that we won. And amazing that this really imperfect man who was an alcoholic, like, he started winning battles, and Lincoln's like, send him more alcohol, whatever. Like, if he can win, he can win. And I think the reason why Trump gravitated toward Grant is because he saw that he was an imperfect man, but he was a perfect man for the job. And I feel like that's how Trump viewed himself, a very imperfect man, but perfect for the job at the time. So, I think that's why he was using that analogy. I think that's why he really liked him. But if this man, his name is Steven, decided to do something about Robert E. Lee or whatever in his Bad Dudes of History series, people would be like, oh, you're a Confederate soldier, you're a racist or something. No, it's just like, it's objectively true. It's objectively true. Both sides wanted him. He decided to fight for Virginia. Sorry, kick me out for a second. So the relationships to the states was vastly different back then. So he's a lot more complex character than people want to pretend. But people say they want to teach accurate history. I don't think they want to teach accurate history. I think they just want a racist outlook on history. When people talk about critical race theory, I think they simply just want to teach that America is bad and evil, and give all these explanations to why everything needs to be torn down. That's what I think. I don't trust any of these people who talk about critical race theory. Nothing from them comes off as remotely genuine, especially when they try to portray critical race theory as we just want to teach accurate history. No. How can you do that when you're teaching through a worldview, a lens? That's what it is. Critical race theory is a lens. It does create a bias. They don't care that it creates a bias, because they've already given into that worldview of America is bad, the institutions are bad, and we need to deconstruct into what? A more racist world, a more race conscious world. Why? Because they don't believe in equality in the law. Because if you just have laws that apply equally to people, because they don't believe in, they think integration was bad. And that's not something that like an off-shot person said. Derek Bell thought that integration was bad, and it's bad to have a colorless society, to view it that way. So if you want a hyper racialized, race conscious world, We have to tear down all these institutions. You don't want like equal law because you don't believe it can be achieved because we've had all this kind of history. So what you need the law constructed in a way that benefits people, because if you don't have equality under the law, let me tell you, every time the government puts their hands in something, they're screwed up. They're picking winners and losers. If you go back to like the COVID stuff, and they're like, well, you're essential, you're not essential. Okay, my flower shop, perhaps you don't think it's essential. It's essential to me because I gotta feed my kids. I gotta feed my family. My employees need to eat. So it's essential to me. And if I miss Mother's Day and Valentine's, you're really killing my business. But McDonald's is open. McDonald's is open. People got to eat. That's true. They don't have to eat McDonald's. McDonald's is not essential eating. McDonald's was killing it. The reason why the doors had to be closed, it's not because of like, I mean, the COVID, yeah, for sure. But they had to keep, like, I had people, friends, whatever, who worked at McDonald's. The reason why they kept their doors closed and you couldn't go inside, like the restaurant, is because they just didn't have the staff. Because they were just killing it with the numbers. But everyone else, if your stuff was shut down, it was so sad watching people just sob because they were losing their business. But the government got involved and was like, you're essential, you're not essential. Oh, you can't have that surgery to know if that mass inside of you is cancerous because that's not essential. That's not an essential surgery. But yeah, absolutely, you should go terminate your pregnancy. That's essential. So you want the government to get involved? Ibram Kendi wanted like a department of like racial justice or some kind of garbage. You want the government to get involved to try to create an equal system. After like creating a hyper-racialized world. That sounds like a disaster. It sounds like a disaster. So these people who say they want honest history, I don't believe them for a second, because they don't want to understand the nuance. They don't want to understand the context. Even thinking about like something like the 3/5 rule. And they're like, oh, just racist. Look at that. They don't think black people are a whole person. It was interesting reading Frederick Douglass's speech about the 4th of July. Excuse me. Because he thought like from the laws, it was obvious that people did think that black people were capable people because they were, I mean, they did something wrong. You punish them. They punish them even more severely. They didn't want them to read and write because they knew that would be dangerous. So they do on some level acknowledge that they are a person. So he thought their laws were really inconsistent. I thought it was a really good point. But the 3/5 law rule, the southern states wanted to use a population of the blacks to gain more control. And the northern states wanted to stop them. It was helping to end slavery. So people don't want to understand the nuance of history. People don't want to understand the nuance. So it's just crazy. Really, really crazy. So I don't trust them when they say they just want to teach accurate history. I don't. I absolutely don't. So a little bit of news about Larry Elder. If you're not familiar with Larry Elder, I'm going to play this clip. Well, I kind of try to clear my throat. When he was on the Rubin Report, just explaining a little bit of some things, if you're not familiar with him, because he's running for governor of California. At least he thought he was, but California is playing some games.
So, but you wouldn't not acknowledge that there are some systemic issues.
Give me an example. Tell me what you think the most systemic racist issue is. What is it?
Well, I would say that because black people in many cases, were descendants of slaves, that racism as an institution, that it just, a certain amount of it just exists.
2015? Give me the most blatant racist example you can come up with right now.
I think you could probably find evidence that, in general, cops are more willing to shoot if the perpetrator is black.
What's your data
than white.
What's your basis for saying that? Last year...
Well, look, I know a lot of people would say, look what's going on in Chicago.
I know what they would say.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what the facts are. 965 people were shot by cops last year and killed. 4% of them were white cops shooting unarmed blacks. In Chicago in 2011, 21 people were shot and killed by cops. In 2015, there were 7. In Chicago, which is a third black, a third white, and a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides are black on black. About 40 per month, almost 500 per year last year in Chicago, and 75% of them are unsolved. Where is the Black Lives Matter on that? The idea that a racist white cop shooting unarmed black people is a peril to black people is BS. It's complete and total BS. And the reason for these so-called activists saying this is the assumption that racism remains a major problem in America. The media, CNN, especially MSNBC, runs down whenever a black cop shoots somebody, and it's some march on Washington. It's ridiculous. Black people, half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year there were 14,000 homicides. Not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Half of them were black, 96% of them black on black of that 7,000. Where's the Black Lives Matter people on that?
So there's where you would say that this is purely because of social justice. This is purely because they want ultimately for people to be angry enough to just keep voting Democrat.
That's right. And where's the evidence of the lack of social justice? When a black suspect is killed by a cop, believe me, the media's on it. People are watching it, and justice will, for the most part, occur.
So that was the moment Dave Rubin had like an awakening. Dave Rubin, he used to be on the Young Turks, and he broke away and started doing his own thing, and he'd have people on a show. Actually, his show is where I found a lot of different people, because I found Steven Crowder from that video he did when he was going around. He used to live in Michigan. Now he lives in Texas. But he was going around different bakeries to see Muslim bakeries to see if they would make a gay wedding cake, to contrast to like the baker in, I think it was Colorado, who wouldn't make a gay wedding cake. And so they're all like, no, we wouldn't do that. So that video went really viral, but that was like the first like Steven Crowder video I saw. So I started watching Steven Crowder's show, and he had an episode that had Dean Cain on it, and I love Dean Cain. I've met him. He's a sweetheart. And he had Milo Yiannopoulos, who was, I guess, a pariah in a lot of circles now, but at the time, he was on there talking about Gamergate. And so I saw he was on Dave Rubin's show, and I watched that interview he had with him. And so then I started watching more Dave Rubin, and I saw that interview with Larry Elder that he had. And so that was like his moment where he was like, oh my gosh, my liberal programming is malfunctioning. And he started thinking a little deeper, because he had already been calling out things he didn't like on the left. But he still considers himself a liberal, but he's like more of a classic liberal he identifies with. But that was the moment where he's like, I got to think about these things a little deeper. And when Larry Elder's like, where's your facts? Where's your data to point that out? You can't just like believe that, make a claim without having some sort of backing. And so it's just funny how it kind of like trailed off, because that's where I found Larry Elder, and I started watching some more interviews with him, listening to from time to time. He's on like a lot of different shows, but anyway, he's had a radio show for a long time, and so he is running for governor of California on the recall with Gavin Newsom. So California decided nope. They said that his paperwork was wrong. And Larry Elder said, no, I complied with everything you guys wanted, including like 300 pages worth of like tax information. I'm like, if that's true, that's just like, that's a lot, man. And so he's like, I complied with everything. So he decided to sue them. And there's two Republicans right now. He just tweeted out like 10 minutes ago, two Republicans suing California Secretary of State over recall election. And they don't want him on the ballot. They don't want him on the ballot. But another guy, because it was all Republicans who were running against Newsom. But a Democrat jumped in and he got on in no problem, which is curious. But so as of right now, it looks like Caitlyn Jenner is the most known Republican on there. And I don't care what some conservatives say or libertarians or whoever think. They may go out and vote. They may go out and vote for Jenner, and Jenner may very well be able to pull it off, but I don't know. I honest to God don't know, because I think there's more people less inclined to be okay with that than you think. 2008, California did vote down gay marriage. So conservatives who keep wanting to lean over that way to try to make the tent broader, leftists don't care. They're hypocrites. And I keep saying Jenner was against gay marriage after Jenner became a woman. So they'll view Jenner as a hypocrite anyway. So they're not going to cross the aisle to vote for a hypocrite just because they're part of the LGBT community. Jenner's opinions have evolved, but they don't trust Jenner. Frankly, I think they got good reason not to. So I just don't think Jenner is a shoo-in. I think Elder makes a lot more sense about what people should back. And I think they're playing games. I read the article with them saying they tossed him out. They're just saying there was something that was filed wrong or they didn't provide something, and he's saying that he did. So he is suing them to get on the ballot, and there's supposed to be like the deadline today. It's like really down to the wire. So we will see what happens. It's like a new kind of developing story, and I hope he can pull it out, because I think he's the best person as far as the like Republican candidates who have, declared. And Jenner has more popularity overall, but he's a second most notable person. And obviously he's had a lot of conservative views for a long time. So he does technically identify as libertarian himself, but he is running as a Republican, and we will see if he's able to get on the ballot. But it looks like to me, California is probably playing games, and California does play games. Like I talked about how government just sucks and they pick winners and losers. It like during lockdown stuff, there were some people who were complaining like in the restaurant industry. And so they had people checking in on them every day to make sure they were complying on stuff. Not because they thought that they were doing something wrong, but they wanted to harass them because they didn't appreciate them talking out of turn. So there's a lot of people in government who are tyrannical. In California, obviously a lot of people learn that. In Michigan, where I'm at, we know that there's a lot of tyrannical people. But I hope Larry Elder can turn it out and sue them and make his voice heard. Now, if there's legitimate reason why he actually isn't on the ballot, then that's another story. But we'll see. We will see. So final story of the day, the big one that I want to talk about, but I will not be talking about this for very long, I guess, or hoping we shall see. So at Turning Point USA, they had their, which is a story by Charlie Kirk, young man to reach out to college campuses, conservatives, in high schools and stuff. So it's like a young people conference. Well, there was a porn star named Brandi Love who decided, and she says she's a conservative. She loves Trump. She's written for the Federalist, and she says she listened to Rush Limbaugh and so on. So she decided to buy a VIP pass. So she was there, put it on her social media. And so some media was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Turning Point USA invited a porn star. And so that started to go around. Well, that was fake news. They did not invite her. She did purchase a VIP pass, which aren't like extraordinarily cheap, but she bought a pass and was there and was excited and so on. So she was posting on her, social media, which there's some other like things that aren't great on the social media. So apparently the spokesperson from Turning Point USA said that some parents rightly, reached out concerned and about the porn star being there. And so Turning Point USA decided to boot Brandi Love, and so her pass was revoked, so she was technically kicked out. So this ended up causing a big hoopla over on the right, and people were constantly talking about it. So my opinion, when I first heard it, was like she paid for a ticket and they kicked her out. But then I read Turning Point's reasoning for it, and I thought it was pretty reasonable. They said they don't. It's just kind of on brand with them, not allowing like influencers who involve porn. They don't fool people that involve porn brands, influencer personalities that post or publish sexually explicit or pornographic content. So that would involve Miss Love. Now, there's some people who are just like, they're an organization that focuses around kids. Like, it is a conservative thing. If it was like CPAC or something, I think that'd be different. But because their organization does focus on young kids, I think their statement is pretty reasonable. I think their explanation is pretty reasonable. So people coming at Turning Point sideways, I think are pretty unreasonable, in my opinion. So there are people who are saying, hey, other people from the Federalist have said, you guys are just being prudes, be the big tent party. And I agree that Republicans are a big tent party. That doesn't mean you let all ideas in the party, but it just means there's a vast swath of people who can come together for the sake of the tenets of the party with most of the platform, or some of the platform, or the things that are important in the platform they want to fight for. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be on the same page. I mean, there's going to be some evangelical people who are against gay marriage in there, and there's going to be people who are under the big tent who are gay, but because they want to fight for the tenets of like the Republican Party, where they want to fight for low taxes and freedom of speech and all the other kind of stuff, they can come together and defend those issues, even though they're not eye to eye. If it's a big tent party, we're not all going to disagree. We're not all going to agree with each other all the time and sing kumbaya, whatever, but we're going to agree to fight together. I don't feel like conservatism itself is a big tent. So this is a conservative youth leadership summit. So I still think Turning Point USA was well within their rights to do that. I mean, of course they're in their rights. I mean, freedom of association, right? It's part of the free speech too. Then there are other people who are pointing out to things that Miss Love had said. And so she was saying that Turning Point USA was a cult. She said that they are just as dangerous or scary to her as Antifa. And she was saying some other things are off the wall. She was talking about Christians. She said, well, I love God, but I just don't like organized religion. And she was saying, well, I just talk to God. And he said, I'm saved by grace. And I'm like, if you talk to God, did he tell you to go sin no more? He didn't say that? Okay. Because I think he would have said that. So she had some off the wall kind of stuff since that time. But people did apparently say some pretty terrible things to her. Then you had other people who are like, objecting porn is one thing, but legally forcing sexual morality is another. So Chad Felix Green said that, and political bunny was also defending Brandi, and was like, it's like we should all be able to just come together and talk about strengthening liberty. And they said attempting to out-moral regulate the left divides all of us. And Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire said the problem with the left is not that they are too stringently moralistic, is that their morals are depraved and insane. We offer an alternative by standing for the correct morals, not by abandoning the whole concept entirely, which I think that's true. I mean, the left takes a moral position when they're like, yeah, our kids should see kink at pride parades, which is an article they wrote in the Washington Post. For real. it's a moral choice when they say things like, we need Medicare for all, even though it will destroy the private insurance market. They don't care because they want medical care for all. They feel it's moral enough to destroy all those other jobs. It is a moral decision when they say things like, we need to increase the minimum wage because we need a living wage, whatever the heck that is. And even though right now people are paying those livable wages that they said was $15 an hour, but people still want to stay home and do their own thing. So they're full of crap. Full of crap now. But they're like, it's worth raising, even though we know it's bad for small business, and we don't care if they don't pay what we think that they should pay. They don't deserve to exist. Like, that's an argument I've had with people. That's an argument that Congress people have made. So those are all moral things. So pretending that it's only the right who comes with a moral position, that is silly. That is silly. So I think that Matt, at least his arguments, some of that he had on like Twitter, I tend to agree with. I did watch his show the other day when he was talking about it. He seemed a little bit harsher on his show. And I decided to watch the little segment that Michael Knowles did. They're both from the Daily Wire. And Michael Knowles, he's talked about a lot about obscenity laws and other stuff like that. But his opinion, I was a little surprised. He thought, he thought it would have been better. He said both sides, he thought, did it wrong. And he thought these people who were like, oh, you should just let in the porn and all that. Like, no, we can't just keep allowing our sphere to just keep bigger and not have some kind of standard there. But he said these people who are just kind of like self-righteous, like, no, they're going a little too far. But he said if he was having a lecture or something, and then you invite her in and she can hear and she can listen and she can participate, she's going to hear probably a lecture on why porn is bad, but at least let her come in and learn and participate, was his thing. So I thought, I guess I would agree with Michael Knowles if it wasn't a conference centered around teenagers and college age kids and parents freaking out. So I think that Turning Point ultimately did the right thing. Maybe you guys disagree with me. I mean, you can let me know, but I ultimately do think they did the right thing. I wrote an article about this on blacktnews.com with some of the more quotes and details about it. But I think they did the right thing. I think they did the right thing. And I do think that, and Matt asked the question like, Matt asked the question like, how far is too far? Where are we going to go with this? Because he was going back and forth with like Tommy Lauren not too long ago about Caitlyn Jenner running for governor. And Tommy's just like, I agree with Caitlyn's policies and she was using her the pronouns that Jenner wants and stuff. And so Lauren didn't see an issue, and Matt's just like, we have to stand for objective truth, and this person is objectively not a woman, and we can't just like bend truth itself. He's like, where do we stand if we can't even stand for like objective truth? And so the thing about Jenner, people were applauding Jenner because he said that biological boys shouldn't be competing with girls in sports because it's a matter of fairness. But then Jenner went on to tell Fox News, like, well, I would set up a special council that would determine if they're truly trans or woman enough to play with the girls. And they would determine that on like how early they took their hormones and other stuff like that. So now we're getting into super dicey territory. In my opinion, I think that's worse. Just letting them come in because they say that they're women. So now you're incentivizing people to get the hormones as early as possible so they can pass your tests and your standards. So I think he said something that he thought conservatives would want to hear, but I think there's more conservatism than just we want to cut taxes and regulations, because we don't even know what regulations you're talking about, sir. So a lot of that to people in California might sound like gobbledygook. I mean, lower taxes, yes, sounds good for sure, because they're taxed a lot. But I think you hear lower regulation, and unless you're like talking about specific things and going into the really nerdy stuff of how that's going to cause more business and money and cash flow and stuff to come in, like, and even if you go start naming all those things, some people are going to be impressed, but some people, their eyes are just going to roll into the back of their heads. So you're going to have more than that. But saying you're going to have a special counsel to determine who gets to play and who doesn't, after you is your whole life lived as a man, you have gold medals as a man, and now you want to be identified as a woman, but you don't want to give the same courtesy to other people so they can play. That's messed up. That's messed up. I think a little bit hypocritical. So, yeah, I don't think the left are going to cross the threshold just so they can say we got someone in the LGBT community as the governor. So conservatives kind of bending to say, yeah, we can get Jenner in, and we're going to own the libs and show that we're for the LGBT. Like, you can be for them by just believing in equality, but you don't to do that. Do you know how many people voted for Obama because they thought they were going to end racism? And now people are like, that was when everything got worse. So careful what you wish for, and be careful for the reasons why you decide to do things, and make sure that it's not to virtue signal. So Lauren says it's that she agrees with Jenner on the policy, but Jenner just sounds like when they talk about stuff, it's just like bumper sticker slogan stuff, that typical Republican stuff and the deep stuff. But that council thing is crazy to me. So we got to really decide where we're going to go with this stuff, how deep we're going to go. Someone said, don't be such a prude when they kicked out the porn star. I'm extraordinarily prude. I'm extraordinarily prude. So, and I know there was someone who left a comment when I had posted my article saying that they knew of Brandi Love for reasons. And, so I know there's some people who are into the conservative movement and probably might have went to their OnlyFans account, but I guess we don't have to be on the same page. But I do consider, like, there was a time Republican Party and conservative were like synonymous with family values, and I'd like to get back to that. Like, I know Trump had like a really, really, you know, with the multiple divorces and other stuff like that. But people bent with Trump, not because, at least me and other people I talk to or whatever, we broadened our base for him because we believed he was going to protect our values, not because we wanted them necessarily corrupted. But the left, they were trying to fake us out, play this game where they're like, we're gonna give him all this media coverage. And it was, if you read Hillary Clinton's email, that was like literally her plan to make Donald Trump the nominee and then win. And her staff was really, really concerned that was all the plan she had. And I guess it was, and she lost. So they had all this media, everybody like he was going on Morning Joe, Cup of Joe, whatever it is. And now they just hate him, but he was going all these places, they were giving all his media, all this attention. And the plan was to make Donald Trump the nominee and then just flood all this media and stuff on him, this negativity, and just take him out. That was their plan. And so they thought they could knock him out with stuff like, Hollywood access tape, which it's funny because everyone I was at the recount that they had in Michigan. And when I was with the Hillary Clinton people and the Jill Stein people, all of those guys are men. And they were like, oh yeah, men talk like that. And they all believed and accepted that it was locker room talk. And I was the only one who didn't talk like that. So it was funny because the people I was talking to on the left all admitted that was like a natural thing that they did and a common thing. And it wasn't really a big thing, but it captivated the country. Gosh, I remember that night. I'll talk about that more at a later time, but I do want to wrap this up. But the left was trying to do this fake out, like, here's this guy, we made him so he's your only option. So now what? You just got to not vote. And so people on the right was like, I see what you're trying to do, because I'm sure you've probably seen that meme with Trump, and it's like black and white kind of, and he's just pointing, and he's like, they're not after me, I'm just in the way. And that's true because they are really after you. And I know that because people are like, oh, I hate Trump because blah, 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 X, Y, Z, or he's so immoral, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, how do you feel about Mike Pence? They hated him more. They hated him more. So I know they hate me. I know they hate me. So Trump, when he was running, he still had enough sense to go to like, to go before the churches and the evangelical leaders and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, he really did work to build a coalition with a lot of different people. But at the end of the day, like I went to like the Evangelical for Trump events and listened and talked to the people and learned about all the things that they were really doing. Like there was stuff that I saw, stuff that I knew, but there's so much that I didn't know how they really tried to protect the evangelical right. And like, for example, they like hired, so Paula White was over it, but they had like someone stationed like each like level of the government that he covered, like the DOJ, like Department of Education, other places, and then they had like so people protecting your rights on like every level of the executive branch that fell under him. And then they'd also have like prayer warriors. So there's like, we're gonna attack the legal, we're gonna attack the spiritual, and like so and they went on a list of like all these other different kind of things. And so I had a cousin who went to one of those events, and I was like, no wonder why all these devils out here is mad. Like, and people was coming after the way that they did. So it's just really kind of remarkable. So people made room for them in their hearts, not because they thought that he was like, not that they got tricked. Like I always felt like the left thought that they were tricking us with Trump. It's like, no, we know that there are things that we have to pray about for him to get him over the hump, I guess. But we still see that he's fighting for us. So people didn't just like try to throw out their sense of moralities because they wanted to just expand the party so broadly, but as far as our standards and our values, but we recognize that he acknowledged them and thought they were good. Like when people like pastors or whatever come near him and stuff, he like, pray for me, please pray for me. Like I need the prayer. Like, he's always kind of laughing, but I'm like, no, I think he knows that that's true. He knows that that's true. So he was willing to fight for those values still. So there's a lot of people who were afraid of Trump coming into the party, that it was just going to totally like wreck it. And there are people who genuinely don't want like the religious sort of old school conservative people to have a foothold. Like Rush Limbaugh will talk about how people will be like, well, how are we going to get these Christians out of the party? And he'd be like, these Christians are why you're winning. What are you doing? So I'm not willing to abandon that ship. I do feel like those things are a part of like, family values and preserving Judeo-Christian values. And not that I think everybody needs to be Christian. Well, that's what I would genuinely like, to just be honest with you. But that's not something that needs to happen. We are not a nation where we have separation of church and state and stuff. So, but a lot of those values I do believe are important and are evident in our nation. That I think we still need to, in the conservative party, still to adhere to a bit. But again, my position is, she bought a ticket. If it was like a normal circumstance, yeah, come and for sure. But because I would agree with the Michael Knowles position that come and listen and participate, like, but because it was an organization, a conference for young men and women, early college age, or maybe not necessarily early college age, but college age, high school, concerned parents, porn star with her porn name on her badge. I could totally see why they did what they did. And I don't feel like they did anything wrong, turning point. But the conversations were interesting. The conversations were definitely interesting on the right. And I guess we're still going to be hashing out what is our ideology, I guess. But it's just interesting. I thought I would talk about it a little bit. So that's all I got for you guys today. Check out my store. I got my goat hoodie on here. Really, really like it. I've already gotten some compliments on it. I got it in the mail the other day. I was so excited that I got this. I got other stuff as well. Like this Be Better, Not Bitter shirt. People really like that one. I am not the victim you're looking for. I also got this. I'll probably wear that tomorrow. But denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of his atrocities on the back. Just some of them, to be frank. And I do also have the city also in a T-shirt. I got some other stuff on the site too. And so check all that stuff out. Got a little mug here as well, and other stuff that's got my logo on it. So go check that out. If you would like to support blacktnews.com, you can do that at the website, blacktnews.com/donate. Or you can do it via Cash App, or you can do it via PayPal. Thank you guys for everyone who has supported in some kind of way. I really genuinely do appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who is subscribing, everyone who's sharing and liking. Make sure that you are doing that on Facebook, and make sure that you are doing that on YouTube and sharing it. I did post this video. I accidentally posted it on my personal profile. I wondered why people weren't watching it. I did just share it before I went live. I did a video. So Ben Shapiro did a video debunking transgender ideology. So Samantha Lux, who is a trans woman, decided to debunk Ben Shapiro's debunk. So I decided to debunk Samantha's debunking of Ben Shapiro's debunking. So it's about a half hour long. So if you got some time, I would watch that and share that. Because I think it's interesting. I don't know the thoughts and the processes that they have about defining their ideology with the gender, but Ben makes the point that they can't define what a woman is without like using the term, which Samantha really thinks that he did, but I'm like, no, you just proved Ben's point. And it's just a really fascinating kind of look at through the things that they said. And when it got to a point where they're talking about suicides in the trans community, Sam got kind of, I don't know, a little testy, but it was like, well, they keep killing themselves because people won't accept them, and you keep making videos like this. And I'm like, that I think that's really unfair that you're saying we can't even have conversations about this. And it's like the whole world can't walk on eggshells for everyone. So wouldn't it be better to kind of address your discomfort with yourself rather than enforcing speech everywhere else? So I asked those questions. So go ahead and watch that video, share that video. There and watch it on YouTube for sure. And I also want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC for being in the studio today. I love being in their space. They are doing a fundraiser for veterans. So if you want to go to Brighter Michigan PAC, check out their Facebook page and see a little bit what they're doing. I don't know if they're maxed out or not at this point. We got a lot of people going this Friday to the event. It's going to be great. I will be streaming, doing some stuff for them that night. So if you go to their Facebook page and watch the fun, watch the festivities that night. I'm going to be dropping in some cool bits and hopefully do some cool interviews. There's a lot of amazing things that are going to be going on that night. So please participate. And if you would like to donate for the cause, please do that. We honor our veterans for what they do. It's amazing to me when people are always excited when I sing the national anthem and veterans thank me for singing. And I'm just like, you fought for the country and you're happy I sang a song? I'm like, so I hate when people kneel, but that's another story. That's another story for another day. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.